In this tutorial, we're going to look at how to perform a fall damage cancel glitch, which, as the name indicates, allows the player to avoid all the damage that would be caused by a fall, even one that would otherwise be lethal. To do this, we need to roll slightly earlier than the fall damage will be applied. In most cases, this means rolling right before hitting the ground, which under normal circumstances isn't possible since you can't roll in midair. Even in the cases where the fall damage is applied a bit later, you'd still need to do this trick because even in those, the damage happens before the character can roll. To achieve that, we need to perform a plunging attack that hits a slanted ledge in a way that gives us the plunge landing animation, but lets the character slide off at the same time. This results in the character falling down to the ground while still being in this animation that should only really happen after we've landed on solid ground, and therefore lets us roll off of it even if in reality we're still in the air. However, the plunge landing animation doesn't last forever, so if the fall is too long, you might not be able to get the roll in time. Also, depending on the spot of the ledge you hit with your plunge, you'll get a faster or slower fall, so if you get a very slow fall, you might not be able to get the roll in time either. Additionally, heavy weapon classes like greatswords have longer recovery times, meaning that the animation will last a bit longer, making the roll easy to get or even possible at all in some cases. For the purposes of this trick, we can think of this animation as being split into 4 different stages regarding whether it allows us to get the roll or not, and they have to do with how the game manages when an animation can be interrupted by another action. We can see this if we look at the animation's parameters in the animation studio, and they are also roughly represented in this graph on the right for simplicity. As with most attack-related animations, it cannot be interrupted by a player action for about the first third of its duration, which means you can't roll immediately after the plunge. So if you wanted to do a damage cancel for a relatively short distance and you get a very fast fall, you would not be able to get the roll at all if you hit the ground within this part of the animation. However, also as it works with almost any other animation, if you input a roll during this period, it will get queued, and it will happen as soon as the animation reaches the point where it can be interrupted, which is this next section right here. This item right here is what activates the ability for another animation to go off, interrupting this one. In other words, this is the moment from which we are able to roll. You can see that there's multiple jump table items. That is because each one of those is for a different kind of action, meaning that different actions are allowed to interrupt this animation a bit sooner or later than others. In this case, as in most, the very first one is for rolling. At this point, a roll could interrupt this animation, but other ones wouldn't. A bit after that, the attack and block actions get unlocked, and finally after those, it's every other action. After that, the animation continues to go off until it ends right here. When it's over, the character will be standing still in an idle animation and will no longer be able to get a roll anymore. The reason why all this animation dissecting is important is because, as you can see on the graph, the part during which you can roll is split into 2. If you want to roll during this first part, you'll be able to do it easily by rolling normally with your controller without having issues, because here the animation cannot be interrupted by walking, so you can just start holding forward before rolling as you normally would. However, if you try to do it after this point, you'll need to perfectly input both the roll and the movement on the very same frame, because otherwise, if you send the movement first, the plunge landing will be interrupted by a walk animation, and you'll no longer be able to roll. On the other hand, if you input the roll first without the movement, you'll just get a backstep. Thankfully, as you can see on the graph, we have a strat called delayed rolls, which allows us to easily and consistently get a frame-perfect roll without having to actually press both keys at exactly the same time. To do it, we need to set both the walk forward and roll keyboard binds to 2 keys that are right next to each other for convenience. In this case, I use Shift for roll and Z for walk forward, but you might want to use something else, especially if you have an ISO layout keyboard, which will have an extra key in between Shift and Z, and unfortunately you can't bind that key to anything in this game. After that, and here's where the magic happens, we set this menu function 1 action to be both of those at the same time. You'll see why in a second. Once we have the rebinds in place, what we do to get the frame perfect roll every time is press and hold Shift, then press and hold Z right after. At this point, nothing is happening. The roll isn't going through because of the way the rolling and sprinting works in this game, which makes it so the roll input only happens at the moment of releasing the button, and walking forward isn't going through either because as long as we're pressing both keys at the same time, the game is trying to do that menu function 1 we set the rebinds for a moment ago, which takes priority, and that's why we did that. From here, we just need to let go of Shift while still holding Z, which will send a roll input and also a walk forward now that we're not doing menu function 1 anymore, both at the exact same time. Note that after you press Shift and Z, you need to let go of Shift within the next 4 frames, otherwise you'll get a backstep. So you basically want to roll your fingers from one key to the other really quickly like this. Holding shift for too long like that is the most common way of messing this up, so you want to practice the timing on solid ground like you're seeing here before incorporating this into the full damage cancel plunge. Keep in mind too that you need to keep pressing Z for a little bit after letting go of shift so that the direction goes through. If you release them at the same time, you'll also get a backstep. Last but not least, you want to make sure that you press shift first and then Z right after, and never at the same time. For some reason I don't fully understand, pressing them at the same time makes it so that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, so it's better to be sure. As a final note, it's good to get used to using the late rolls for every damage cancel, even those that you could still get with the controller, just for the sake of consistency and being safe. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and if you have any doubts left, please don't hesitate to ask on the Soul Speedruns Discord server or to me directly. See you next time.